Okay, so this is going to be our first video for our class. You will have noticed that I posted on Omnivox a PowerPoint. Um, we're shifting gears a little bit, and we're trying to adjust to this new format, this new platform that we're working with. So I ask you to be patient. We are going to be coming back to our project on the cricket team next week. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what the best way to proceed with that is. But as I mentioned earlier, a couple weeks ago, the CVs and the cover letters are an important part of what we're doing. So we're going to look at that now. And I want to go through the PowerPoints with you, make sure it's clear, and then we're going to look at an example of a CV, and then we're going to look at some of the methods you can use when you're looking specifically to apply for a job, where you can gather the information that's really going to be relevant for you to include in the CV to some degree, but most importantly in the cover letter. Okay, we're going to focus mainly on the CV in this video because I'm going to try to keep these videos relatively short. Next week I'll be, or perhaps later this on the weekend, I'll be posting more videos on the CVs and cover letters, but then as well videos and methods and documents that we can use to continue with the project, which will still be, as it stands now, your final project. What we're going to be doing with the midterm, I'm reassessing things. So clearly it's going to have to be a take-home sort, whether it's going to be a feasibility report, or we may modify that a little bit and say, perhaps make the feasibility report part of your final project and work more on things that are a little more manageable during this strange time that we're dealing with as we transition into this online platform. And it will take a week or two before we sort out all the kinks and are able to really have something working at full tilt. Okay, so as I said, we're going to start today. There we go with the PowerPoint. Make that bigger. So this PowerPoint is it's a very brief one. PowerPoints are not my strength. I think you guys know that to some extent. And I will try to make them as comprehensive as possible, the ones I'll be posting in the future. Keep in mind as well, I am working on a way in which we can have a live interaction through Google Meet probably. I'm still trying to figure out the technology involved there. I know some of the other classes are doing this. We will go to that, where what I'll try to do is arrange it so that on Friday, sometime between 12:30 and 3:30, which is our normal class time, for at least an hour, there'll be access where we can all get on together. I'm not going to make it to 3 hours. This is what these videos are going to compensate mainly for. But that we will have a chance to all be on together, where you can ask me specific questions. I mean, you can always send me questions through Omnivox, but where we can really interact. And I think that's going to be essential to some degree when we're working on the cricket team project. So look for the information concerning how we're going to do that early next week. Okay. So for today, again, CV and cover letter. I'm going to go through this PowerPoint and then we'll go there. Go from there, looking at a specific CV for today. And again, some ways in which you can gather information depending on where you're applying for a job. There we go. Hold on. So CV, again, this information is not overly detailed, but it gives you the things that you need in order to put together your CVs. And I would encourage you very much at this point, starting next week, to start putting together your CV. Clearly, it's going to be a necessary component of our course, but of course, it has a very practical application insofar as you'll have a CV, and it'll be a good one because you'll be getting feedback from me, and we're going to design it together to some extent as well. It's the same thing with the cover letter. Okay, it's a detailed document highlighting your professional and academic history. I mean, a lot of this you know already, but we're going to really nail it down so we can get to a format that you're comfortable with. It's specific to your background, and it's tailored for the job in which you're applying. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, because you can start off, and what we'll be doing at this stage is basically building a generic CV, a CV that is not tailored necessarily for the specific job, but it's going to be generic insofar as you'll be able to tweak it whenever you're applying for a job to make it specific to that job you're applying for. All right, and I think this will become clear as we proceed. You're going to see this a lot in the PowerPoint, and I'm going to keep stressing it. For your CV, you want to keep it short. Now, for most of you, if you don't have extensive employment history, this won't be much of a challenge. You'll be able to keep it short. But the main reason for the short CV, and we've talked about this, and it applies to the cover letter as well, is if you hand in 2-3 pages, the people who are going to be reading your CV, always keeping in mind, they're probably looking at dozens of other CVs as well. They don't want to have to start turning the pages. You want to be able to grab their attention as much as you can into a one-page CV. Here it says most people have a resume that is 2 pages long. Keep it to 1 page if you finished school recently, which I think applies to you, and do not have a lot of experience. If you do have a lot of experience, you still try to keep it to 1 page, but chances are it can drift over into 2 pages, but it really depends on how much information that you need to put on the CV, and making sure that you don't put information on the CV that really isn't necessary. And we'll talk more about that as we proceed. Customize your resume for each job, especially at the beginning of your resume. We're going to look at an example of what they're talking about there, where you're going to let that person know that you're not sending them a generic CV, right? That's the one that you always have, but that you modify for each job. Okay. And it says here, general, generic resumes do not work in today's labor market, but you need that, because then so that way you don't have to construct a CV every time you're applying for a job, a different CV. You'll have all the essentials there, and then you just tweak it. And I'll show you where you can tweak it, so it doesn't take up much time, and where to include the information that makes it specific to that particular job. You should include your volunteering experience in this section, in the section on work experience, especially if you don't have much work experience. So any volunteer work you've done, I mean, you have to make that assessment, and you have to use your judgment on this. But that always looks good. It shows that you're willing to work, even with no money involved. Okay, so it demonstrates a work ethic, which always is impressive on a CV. So again, length, no more than 2 pages. Really, we're working towards a 1-page CV at this stage. The layout, and we're going to look at an example. You're putting your name on top, make it larger, centralized, and bold. The layout, there are many different templates out there when it comes to CVs. Okay, so the layout, we're going to look at trying to keep all of ours pretty much the same, but the layout gives you options. All right, and you need to decide what best suits you and what you're doing, and it also can pertain to the specific job you're applying for. That's why your generic, your initial CV, you should establish what kind of layout, the type of layout where you don't have to change that layout if you're applying for different jobs. Okay, again, we're going to look at an example of one in a couple of minutes, and we'll talk more about that. The personal statement, which is up at right at the beginning, is a statement directly under your contact details. You make sure it's no more than 5 sentences. You're going to see constantly emphasizing don't write too much, and should cover who you are, what you can bring to the table, and your career's aims. And this is this area where you will be gearing it specifically for the job you're applying for. Now, keep in mind, it doesn't have to be overly detailed in terms of the specific job, because you're going to have a cover letter that's going to be accompanying your CV. And that's where you're really going to demonstrate your knowledge of the job, your qualifications, which are on your CV, but you'll expand on those a bit, and where you get a chance to demonstrate that you have done your research regarding the company that you're applying to. Okay, and again, we're going to look at an example of that in a minute or two as well. Obviously, employment history, depending on how extensive it is. Education, that's probably what you're going to have more information with, unless you have been working at a variety of jobs over the last couple of years. And again, we come back to this format. What you're looking for: organized, neat, and very importantly, clarity. You don't want to have whoever's reading your CV trying to figure things out or unsure what this section means or that section means. The clarity is essential. Okay, and you want to keep it consistent, and that means consistent in the terms of the fonts. If you're using bullet points, etc., everything is consistent and needs to look uniform. Okay, now that's for the CV. The cover letter, which I will be sending another video next week at some point, where I'll go into a little more detail with the cover letters. Very briefly at this point, one of the key elements here is it is to be short as well. The cover letter should never be more than a page and should usually be less than a full page. It's a great opportunity when we write the cover letters for you to really hone your writing skills as well, because you really have to be focused and include only that which is essential and demonstrates your ability and qualifications specifically for that job, but also it will show the company, the HR department, whoever's reading your cover letter, that you have done your research and you know not just about that specific job, but about the company as well. All right. Um, Again, we'll go in more detail with this in another video. You're leading with a strong opening sentence. As always, the first things that they see, you want to have their attention. You want to demonstrate your strong writing skills. And it has to be at the beginning, because if you have a weak beginning, they're not going to continue reading. Right? We've talked about that. Again, the research, you know what the company does and some of the challenges it faces. And then you're going to talk about how your experience has equipped you to meet the needs, the specific needs for that particular job in this company. Remember, a lot of companies, are big companies in particular, have a variety of different positions that they may be looking to hire in. All right, so you demonstrate a knowledge of the company in general, but then also the specific job that you're applying for. And this will become clearer when we do a little exercise with a company after we finish through this PowerPoint. And you make it clear why you want the position and so on. Key here, don't go overboard with the flattery. All right, it's a fine line. You're demonstrating that you know the company, that you've done your research, but at the same time, you don't want to make it sound like you are obviously trying to butter them up. Okay? Fine line. This is what writing and communication is all about. Recognizing how far you can go without going too far. Okay? So again, the greeting is personalized for the job. Intro, body, conclusion. Okay, again, we'll look at this in more detail in the next video. But this gives you an idea, and we've talked about this, but you have basically the greeting, the three main sections: the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. Okay? And you don't want to try like you're smarter than you are. Do not lie. Do not pretend to be anything that you're not. What you're trying to demonstrate is the best that you are. And that needs to be that, and that is enough. If you go overboard with it, they'll get it. These people read through cover letters and CVs every day if it's a big company. I remember, I've done this. I can't tell you how many CV and cover letters I've looked at when I'm hiring. If you're trying to be more than you are, these people will pick up on it. They'll see it in a variety of different ways. And remember, the purpose of the cover letter and the CV is to get you to the next stage, the interview. Okay? They're going to have a pile of 50 CVs and cover letters. They're going to whittle that down to a short list, which is going to be maybe 5. And those are the 5 who are going to be asked to come in for an interview. Okay? So essential here is to stand out to some degree so that you make that short list. That gets you to the interview, right? And we'll be talking about the interviews. We're going to find a way that we can do interviews as well. I'll get part of this whole business communication thing. Okay, so that's going through here the PowerPoint. What I want to look at now is, let's see, here's a sample. Okay, I'll get a little bigger. Okay, now this is just one possible format, but again, what I like about this one is it's on one page and it's clear, it's concise, and it's right to the point. I'll send you a copy of this CV as well, as a document on Omnibox. But you can see what I want you to notice here. The details are less important because this isn't about you. This is someone else. But notice how it's all clearly laid out. Okay, so the professional profile, core skills and achievements. We'll talk about this a little more when we proceed. But the skills that you're going to be including here include your computer knowledge, your technological knowledge, things like that. This section, core skills and achievements, it can go here or it can go down here. All right, that's something depending on how many of these core skills and achievements you have. Right, this is quite a bit here, but you can see it's also things like teamwork. Okay, so how big this section is depends on what kind of experience you have in these areas, but you do have to have a section on those core skills that you're proficient in, Microsoft or Excel and all the things that are what you are proficient in, and things that work directly towards the job that you're applying for. And you will know that most of the jobs will certainly be relatively in the same category. All right. Education, this can be more extensive here. You can lay it out like this, or you can lay it out straight down. This is just one example. I will show you other templates, other examples, so that you can choose which one you prefer when you're writing this for our class. Okay, this is just one example. Work experience, again, how much you have. When you do your work experience, this is the layout. Give when you work there, if it's to the present, name of the company, and so on. And this outline business, yeah, it can work. It may not be necessary, but certainly the responsibilities. This is a key component. It shows what you've been doing, and ideally, you will be talking about the responsibilities you had at whatever job it is, even if it's at something like Joe's Cafe, that are lend themselves to broader positions, the kinds of positions that you're applying for. References available on request. You always have this, and we'll talk about this a bit more, but they're going to ask for references most likely. You don't necessarily have to include them in your CV. They're upon request. That way, you make that short list. To make that short list, they may contact you, ask you for that, your references, in which case you can give them to them. Or you can include them, but the problem with that is that chances are that will spill over into a second page. So let's just look briefly, because again, I want to keep these relatively short. As an example, how would you proceed if you were, this is just a random example, but let's look at Bombardier. Let's say we want to apply for a job at Bombardier. Um, how do we proceed from here? Okay, so you've got your CV, you've got a generic CV, you're working on your cover letter. You want to make sure the cover letter is geared towards Bombardier, and you want to tweak your CV so that it's geared towards Bombardier. But Bombardier is a very big company, right? So you have to first, what job are you going to be applying for? Well, if you look down, should be down here, careers, right? So you always down at the bottom, this is usually where you find all this different material. You start off by looking at the careers. This is going to tell you, search all jobs, okay? Almost every big company, in any case, has this. You may have already decided what job you're applying for. Okay, you may have seen an advertisement or someone may have told you about it. But this is one way to proceed where you can see, look at all the different jobs that are available. And again, because it's Bombardier, it's all over the place, you'd have to filter the location. Chances are you'd want to filter the location, say to Montreal, and reset. Okay, that wasn't the right way. Okay, hold on. Let's see if I can figure out how to do this. Or here, search by location. Maybe this would be the better way. If we look at down here, so if we look at Montreal, search jobs, boom, there we go. Everything in Montreal. Okay, you see Dorval, where most of it is, or even downtown. What you're going to do is, let's say you're looking to get a job as a project manager. Okay, you want to look very carefully at the job description. Obviously, first and foremost, to determine whether or not you're qualified for the job. Let's say you are. The other thing that you're going to note here when you're looking at the qualifications and the description and so on is the language that they're using in their description. There's a lot of phrases, words here that you will want to incorporate into your CV and especially into your cover letter. You don't want to do it by cutting and pasting it because they'll see that, they'll recognize that. But you want to be able to utilize what they've used and to position it within your own writing. Okay, so that will show, even if they do recognize it, it demonstrates that you have put in that much more effort to get this job. But it also will give you an idea of what you can emphasize in relation to where your strengths are. Okay, look, for example, manage activities during project development phases, feasibility study, that's feasibility reports, right? Some of the things, so that would be something that you would perhaps want to emphasize in your cover letter, and perhaps even in the CV, if you've done feasibility reports in some, those your skills, that you've worked extensively on feasibility reports in your classes, you can put that in your education. All these things, business plan. You look here for the things that are going to mesh specifically with your talent set. You don't want to start emphasizing the things that you are not as prepared for. Okay, so when you go through this, you're just picking out the things that you know you can use in the cover letter and to some degree in your CV. Okay, and you can see, like a company like Bombardier, it's quite extensive. Okay, things like you are passionate about achieving technological excellence. You don't want to say it exactly like that, but you do want to emphasize in that cover letter your seriousness and your work ethic. How do you convey your work ethic? The CV will give your experience. It's the cover letter that really will demonstrate your work ethic in terms of what you're emphasizing, and very importantly, it can't be emphasized enough, a well-written cover letter, okay, will demonstrate your intelligence and your skills as a communicator. That's why the writing skills are so important, because keep in mind, if it's a poorly written cover letter, if it's a poorly designed CV, they'll take one glance at it. They'll read the first sentence, two sentences of your cover letter. If it's full of grammatical errors, or if it's just rambling, and it's too wordy, they're going to chuck it. They got 50 others to go through. So you need to be very concise and precise, but also at the same time, you're selling yourself, right? This is a big part of what you're doing. This part of the communication, all right, aspect of this course is to really help you to recognize how to communicate in such a way that you are impressing those who you are communicating with in the business world, right? In this case, this applies to feasibility reports, final reports, and all that. But in this case, very specifically to the CV and the cover letter. Now, the only other thing I want you to just keep in mind with the Bombardier as well, you come back to the home, a good thing to do is to look at the About Us. Who is Bombardier? This information, you read it through, take down notes. and think about what you can incorporate into your cover letter, more your cover letter than your CV here, that will show them that you have done your research. You know who Bombardier is, or whatever company it is, and that you're demonstrating them that you've actually read through all this. Okay, about a Bombardier, about aviation. I I want them to know that I am taking this very seriously and that I know about them. I've done my research. Okay, you go even further. The other things you can look at, sustainability media. Yeah, here, this is what I was looking for. Board of directors. Now, you're not going to include these people's names anywhere in your CV. These are the top dogs at Bombardier, but you want to know them. And if you're doing this research and finding out and recognizing, and you want to know, who the top guy, chairman of the board, I want to know this guy. If not in your cover letter, okay, because it's very hard to talk about the chairman of the board in your cover letter, but it might be something that's going to come up in your interview, right? Because you're anticipating you're going to make that short list of 5 people, and you're going to go into the interview and you want to demonstrate, hey, I know this company, I know who everyone is, right? Uh, People in management, board of directors, management, history. Well, why not? Why not? If they have a section on their history, it's a company like Bombardier that's been around for a long time, look it over, take some notes, see if there's anything there that you can throw into that cover letter. Okay, and you'll be surprised how much you might be able to. But more importantly, it is also preparing you for the interview. So you're qualified for the job you're applying for, right? This is going to be a given. You're qualified for that job. That's to be demonstrated through the CV. It'll show your qualifications. The cover letter emphasizes your qualifications and gets a little more, allows them to know a little more about you. It's where you can elevate your status with them. Again, demonstrating your writing abilities and your knowledge of the job specific and the company. All right. So you want all this. And then whatever information you've gathered through your research of the company and that job that you're not putting into the CV or into the cover letter, you have that information for the interview. And that way you will impress. Because remember, you go from 50, you want to make the short list of 5. That's what the CV and the cover letter will do. You get to that short list of 5, then you go in for the interview. They're only hiring one person. Okay? So the more information, the more research you do, the better equipped you will be to get that job. And we will be doing these types of interviews, right? This is going to be part of, we're going to do it in some way online, where I will put you through the interview, having done many myself, and to prepare you, um, so that you don't ever find yourself in an interview where you're right. You're selling yourself at that point. They know you're qualified. They've been impressed by your cover letter. Now it's about who are we going to hire as a person. Okay. So again, I think we're going to wrap that here for now. Look over these things. Start thinking about it. I do strongly recommend that you, excuse me, that you start putting together the CV. Okay. We're going to look at them together. We'll tweak them. We'll be talking next week about cover letters, and coming back to our main project with the Cricket team, and start talking about interviews and presentations. We're a small class, and that's going to allow us to find a format where you'll still be able to do the oral component to some degree, for this class. All right. In terms of your midterm, what it will specifically be, I will be determining next week. Again, I'm thinking because the feasibility report, we really need to spend more time, and it's more difficult in these videos to really get to. We'll return to the feasibility report, but I'm thinking of making that more part of the final project. So for your midterm, it's probably going to involve CVs, and cover letters, memos, and things like that. Okay. And once I decide next week what it's going to be, I will send you the document telling you this is what your midterm is, and you'll have at least 2 weeks. Okay, 2 weeks to write that CV cover, whatever it is. It will not be extensive. I understand all too well. These are trying times and difficult times and new. This is a new experience. I've certainly never taught like this before. So I think this is new for all of us. So we are going to ease into it. We have 8 weeks. Still plenty of time to get through this and touch on all the key elements regarding what this course really is focused on. Okay? So that being said, I hope you're all doing well, staying safe, etc. At this stage, contact me through Omnivox if you have any questions or concerns. And check Omnivox regularly. I'll be posting things regularly. Next week, you should be getting more video and more documents, more PowerPoints, and so on, and a little more structure and understanding of where we're going to be going. All right. So keep checking your Omnivox, and I'll be posting another video early next week. And contact me through Omnivox at this point if you have any questions and concerns. And we will hopefully next week or the week after be able to set up this Google Meet where we can all be on together at the same time. And I think then it'll be all your questions can be addressed then. Okay. Have a great day.